I'm Melissa Foster, 28 years old, and I never thought I'd be the one to expose my entire family right at the dinner table. It was supposed to be just another ordinary Sunday evening in Omaha, a family dinner like so many before. My mother kept pressing me with endless questions about my life, her voice dripping with fake concern. My father, as usual, tossed out a few flat jokes, trying way too hard to keep the mood light. And my brother. He smiled, called me the best little sister yet. His eyes revealed something else entirely. The air in the room grew heavy. Their smiles felt forced, like they were all hiding a secret I wasn't meant to know. I'd had enough. With a low, bitter laugh, I leaned forward and said, "I'm done with this charade. I know you've been scheming behind my back." The room froze instantly. Forks halted mid-air, faces drained of color, and their fake cheer collapsed in an instant. What were they plotting? You'll have to wait to find out. Have you ever faced betrayal from your own family? Share your story in the comments below, and let's expose those backstabs together. Growing up in the suburbs of Omaha, I was always the hardest worker in the family. I'm Melissa Foster, and ever since I learned to read, I buried myself in books chasing straight A's while my older brother Daniel drifted through life. School came too easily for him, while I had to struggle to earn the title of valedictorian, then a degree in marketing, and now I'm a digital marketing specialist running my own campaigns. My proudest achievement, owning a significant share in the family business, a manufacturing company my grandfather left behind. Those shares were the reward for years of effort, a legacy I earned with sweat and strategy. But my parents, Deborah and Kenneth, never saw it that way. Since childhood, they always favored Daniel with praise, new cars, and countless second chances, even when he failed classes or skipped chores. "He's just sensitive," my mother would say, brushing off his failures. My father would nod, handing Daniel the car keys while I had to scrub dishes just to earn pocket money. By the time we got to college, the favoritism hurt even more. They paid for Daniel's apartment while I scraped by with scholarships and two jobs. I learned early on to rely on myself to build a life without depending on their help. It made me sharper, tougher, but it also left a lingering ache. Why was I never enough for them? That ache turned into suspicion a few weeks ago. My mother suddenly started calling more often, her voice dripping with sweetness when asking about my latest campaigns. "You're doing so well, Melissa." "Any big plans at work?" she said, but it sounded rehearsed, like she was reading from a script. It wasn't her usual scolding or prying into my love life. It was too focused, too eager. Meanwhile, my father kept bringing up the family business. "We should talk about the company's future," he said over coffee, his eyes avoiding mine. The company was thriving, my marketing strategies had doubled our online reach. So why was he suddenly so interested? And then there was Daniel. He'd never cared much about my life before, but suddenly he started texting me about my schedule. "Busy week, sis. Any big meetings?" His messages were full of smiley faces and emojis, but they reeked of calculation. I'd seen him charm his way out of trouble before, but this felt different, like he was fishing for specifics. Once, when I mentioned a client presentation, he pressed further. "Who's the meeting with when?" His tone was too sweet, too interested. These weren't coincidences. My mother's probing calls, my father's vague mentions of finances, and Daniel's fake warmth, none of it added up. I've spent years analyzing consumer behavior at work. I know when someone is trying to sell me something. My instincts told me they were hiding a plan that involved me, but not for my benefit. Childhood favoritism resurfaced in my mind. Daniel always got what he wanted, whether he deserved it or not. Was this about the company? My shares? Maybe I couldn't prove it yet, but the pieces were starting to align. Their behavior wasn't just strange, it was a performance, and I was the one they were trying to deceive. So I began watching them more closely, noting every forced smile, every leading question. My mother now calls daily, always circling back to my work. My father once mentioned restructuring the company, then quickly changed the subject. Daniel even offered to help me with my projects, laughable since he doesn't even know how to use a spreadsheet. Their efforts to act normal only made them look guiltier. I was no longer just the hardworking daughter. I was the one they underestimated, and I was ready to uncover exactly what they were after. Sunday dinner at my parents' house in Omaha took place on a chilly October evening. I stepped through the front door expecting the usual pot roast and casual chatter, but the moment I set foot inside, I sensed something was off. The dining room was staged like a holiday banquet, gleaming silverware, crystal glasses sparkling, and an awkward bouquet of roses as the centerpiece. My mother Deborah greeted me with an overly bright smile, quickly pulling me toward my seat. My father Kenneth had already poured the wine, his laughter louder than usual. And Daniel, he slid a shiny designer handbag across the table toward me, saying, "A little gift for my best sister." I froze. Daniel had never given me a gift, not even on my birthdays. The glossy leather shimmered under the chandelier, but it looked more like a prop in a play I hadn't been cast in. As we sat down, the flattery began. My mother gushed about my latest marketing campaign, her voice brimming with excitement. "You did such an amazing job, Melissa. The new ad is wonderful." She had never cared about my ads before. My father chimed in, praising my business savvy while theatrically slicing the roast beef. Daniel leaned in, pressing me about recent client meetings. "You must be so busy with those big contracts, right?" His smile was too wide, his gaze too sharp. Their compliments sounded rehearsed, each word dripping with a forced warmth that made my skin crawl. I nodded, forcing a smile, but my heart pounded. This wasn't a family dinner, this was a performance. The questions soon cut deeper. My mother asked if I had thought about settling down, her voice oddly urgent, as if my personal life had suddenly become her new obsession. My father hinted at travel plans, pressing to know exactly when I'd be away. Daniel, swirling his glass of wine with feigned casualness, brought up my role in the family company. "You've been so dedicated to the business. Ever thought about taking a break?" His words were smooth, but they landed like a warning. My hand tightened around my fork. Every question, every smile felt like a move in a game of chess where I was the piece they wanted off the board. I tried to eat, tried to play along, but the weight of their stares grew heavier. The roses on the table seemed to mock me, their fragrance mingling with the tension in the air. I glanced at the handbag Daniel had given me and thought, this dinner, this gift, it wasn't affection. It was a bribe, a smokescreen. My stomach twisted, not from the food, but from the certainty building inside me. They were working together, each playing a role, all designed to make me drop my guard. At last, I couldn't take it anymore. I set my glass down hard, the sharp clink cutting through their conversation. "I know you're plotting against me," I said, my voice calm but icy. The room fell silent. My mother's smile vanished, her eyes widening in shock. My father's knife froze mid-slice, his face pale. Daniel choked on his wine, coughing as he tried to laugh it off. "What, Melissa? You're crazy," he stammered, but his voice cracked. My mother rushed in, words tumbling too quickly. "Sweetheart, why would you say that? We're just having dinner." Her denial dripped with desperation, her hands twisting the napkin tight. My father only stared, the usual jokes gone. Their reactions only confirmed my suspicions. Daniel's nervous laugh, my mother's panicked tone, my father's silence. They weren't surprised by my accusation. They were terrified I had seen through them. I leaned back, watching them squirm as the mask of the perfect family crumbled under my gaze. Daniel tried again, insisting it was just a gift, but his eyes darted immediately to my mother, seeking her approval. She nodded too quickly, her laugh brittle and hollow. The air grew suffocating, every glance they exchanged like a silent confession. I didn't have concrete proof, but I didn't need it. Their panic was proof enough. After that dinner, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. My family's panicked reactions, my mother's hasty denial, Daniel's stammering, my father's silence confirmed that they were hiding something. I wasn't about to wait for their next move. With my background in marketing, I knew how to dig deep and uncover patterns, and that's exactly what I did. Over the following week, my apartment turned into a strategy room as I pieced together the fragments of their scheme, like I was building a campaign plan. First, I checked my mother's email. Deborah had always had the habit of leaving her laptop open at home, a habit I'd noticed years ago. One late night at the house, I logged into her account. Most of her correspondence was mundane recipes church groups, but one thread of emails caught my eye. It was between her and Gerald Thompson, a board member of our family manufacturing company. They were discussing reallocation of shares to secure the company's future. My name appeared multiple times, not as a partner, but as an obstacle. Gerald wrote, "Melissa's stake is too large for her to manage." My mother replied, "Daniel will handle it better." My stomach dropped. My own mother was plotting to strip me of my inheritance. Next, I checked Daniel's phone. He'd left it on the counter during a family brunch, so confident he hadn't even locked it. The messages between him and Victor Payne, another board member, made my blood boil. "She doesn't know a thing," Daniel wrote. "We just need to push the transfer through." Victor replied, "Get Deborah to sign, and it's done." That transfer meant my shares, the portion my grandfather had entrusted to me, would fall into Daniel's hands. This wasn't just greed. It was Daniel clinging to the favoritism he'd enjoyed since childhood, convinced he deserved what was never his by right. Then I dug into the company's digital archives using my executive access. Buried in a folder labeled Forecasts, I found a draft proposal drawn up 2 weeks before the dinner. It outlined the plan to shift my shares to Daniel under the guise of strategic adjustment. Gerald's and Victor's signatures were all over it, along with notes about minimizing Melissa's involvement. The language was cold corporate, but the intent was obvious. They wanted me out. Daniel wasn't just my mother's golden boy, he was the puppet they intended to use to control the company. And then came the crushing blow. Browsing a local business forum on social media, I stumbled across a post from an anonymous account. "Some heirs inherit too much and don't deserve it. Greedy and ungrateful." Another post called me an arrogant climber destined to ruin the family legacy. The account profile was blank, but the linked email matched Daniel's old university address. I traced his posting history and uncovered more venom, calling me conceited, unworthy, even hinting that I had stolen my shares. My own brother was smearing me online to justify their scheme. His words stung, but they also lit a fire inside me. He thought I was clueless, but I was already a step ahead. I needed legal backup. I called Cynthia Reynolds, a law school friend who specialized in corporate disputes. Over coffee, I showed her the emails, the texts, the proposal. "This is clearly an attempt to undermine your ownership," she said, her voice calm but firm. She confirmed that the transfer would require board approval, which Gerald and Victor were pushing toward. Cynthia advised me to gather more evidence and prepare for confrontation. "They're counting on your silence," she warned. "Don't give it to them." Her words echoed in my head, solidifying my resolve. I wasn't just fighting for my shares, I was fighting for my place in a family that had always pushed me aside. In the days that followed, I cross-referenced every document, saved screenshots of Daniel's posts, and backed up the email threads. My marketing skills identifying patterns, analyzing motives, helped me connect the dots. Daniel's desperate need for favoritism fueled this betrayal, with my mother aiding him and my father quietly complicit. Gerald and Victor were opportunists eager to profit from our family's fracture. Each piece of evidence tightened the noose of truth in my hands. I wasn't paranoid, I was right, and I was ready to prove it. A week after my investigation, I began preparing for my defense. The emails, messages, and documents I had uncovered proved my family's betrayal, but I needed more than evidence. I needed a strategy to stop their scheme. Then an email from my mother arrived, inviting me to a family meeting at a downtown Omaha restaurant to discuss company matters. The vague wording screamed trap, but it also gave me a target. Using my planning skills from marketing, I built a dossier to protect my shares and confront their lies backed by allies who stood with me. I started by reinforcing the evidence. The emails between my mother and Gerald Thompson were damning, but I needed additional financial weight. Using my executive access, I pulled company records showing the value of my shares, millions of dollars tied directly to marketing campaigns I had executed. I found a board memo from Victor Payne pushing for an ownership adjustment to strengthen leadership. It was their plan in corporate disguise. To nail Daniel, I recorded a phone call steering the conversation toward the company. "You're carrying too much, Melissa," he said smoothly. "Maybe it's time to step back a little." Those words were a trap now captured and saved as proof. I met Cynthia Reynolds at her office, laying out everything: emails, financial reports, text messages, and Daniel's recording. Cynthia's jaw tightened as she read. "They're trying to push you out," she said firmly, then called Timothy Larson, a corporate attorney. Timothy reviewed the company bylaws and confirmed my shares were protected, unless the board voted otherwise. "They're counting on your silence," he said. Together, we drafted a legal objection to block any transfer attempt reinforced by my documents. Cynthia emphasized precision. Every detail had to be airtight to make our case unbreakable. I knew they might attack my sanity to discredit me. I reached out to Dr. Margaret Stone, a therapist I had seen years ago. Over a video call, I shared the pressure of the situation without disclosing specifics. "You're sharp and composed," she told me, and offered to write a letter affirming my mental soundness. Within 2 days, the signed statement was in my hands, a shield against personal attacks. It felt like I was arming myself for a war I already knew would turn ugly. For emotional strength, I turned to Sharon Mitchell, a college friend now living in Minneapolis. I told her about my mother's emails, Daniel's greed, and the confrontation ahead. "I'll be on the next flight," she said. When Sharon arrived in Omaha, her fierce support steadied me. Over coffee, she told me, "You're not just fighting for your shares, you're fighting for your place." Her words fueled my resolve, reminding me I wasn't alone in this battle. Each night, I reorganized the archive. My evidence, financial reports, emails, Daniel's recording, toxic posts was locked in a secure digital vault. Cynthia and Timothy prepared the legal brief to counter every board maneuver. Dr. Stone's letter stood ready to silence any claims about my sanity. Sharon stayed close, keeping my spirit steady. My mother's meeting invitation confirmed they thought I was oblivious, but I was ready to turn their scheme into a trap of my own. This wasn't just about protecting my shares, it was about proving they could no longer push me aside. The atmosphere in downtown Omaha felt electric as I walked into the upscale restaurant. I entered the private dining room, my heart beat steady even though I knew I was about to face a storm. The table was draped in crisp white linen silverware, gleaming an image in stark contrast to what I was about to expose. Deborah, Kenneth, Daniel, Gerald, Victor Payne, Allen, and Judy Pierce were already seated, their faces a blend of forced calm and barely hidden tension. I sat down, clutching the file that would tear apart their facade. Without preamble, I spoke, my voice firm and clear. "The family company is worth $10 million, and my shares are its foundation." Their eyes flickered, but I didn't stop. "I know about your plan, Deborah, Daniel, Gerald, to strip me of my shares and hand them to Daniel." I slid the folder forward, revealing printed emails detailing their scheme. The pages showed Daniel colluding with Gerald, Deborah's approval, and their goal of forcing me out. Then I unlocked my phone and displayed screenshots from Daniel's secret social media account. His posts mocked me, calling me greedy and unworthy of the family legacy. The air thickened as those words hung in the silence. Deborah's face twisted, her eyes wide with shock. "Absurd," she screamed, shattering the quiet. "You're paranoid, Melissa, twisting everything to make yourself the victim." Her hands trembled as they clawed at the table, her denial drenched in desperation. Daniel shot to his feet, his chair scraping harshly against the floor. He slammed both fists down his face, burning red with fury. "It's all lies!" He roared, eyes blazing, pointing straight at me. "You faked those emails, those posts, everything. You're trying to destroy this family." His voice cracked, exposing his panic, but the rage only steeled my resolve. Kenneth, usually silent, leaned forward, his jaw set. "You dare accuse your own family," he growled, seething with anger. "We've always supported you, and this is how you repay us." His words stabbed at me, but I met their eyes without flinching, then played my final card. From my phone, Daniel's voice filled the room. "Melissa doesn't deserve those shares. We'll edge her out quietly. Make it look like she volunteered." The blatant betrayal silenced every protest. Deborah's mouth hung open, but no words came. Daniel froze, fists clenched, his aggression collapsing into shock. Kenneth leaned back, pale, unable to look at me. The others reacted quickly. Victor Payne muttered a few words before slipping out the door, his footsteps echoing in the silence. Alan and Judy Pierce exchanged uneasy glances and left as well, eager to distance themselves from the chaos. The room felt like a battlefield, their anger and fear colliding with my steady resolve. Deborah tried to salvage the moment, her voice trembling. "You're misunderstanding, Melissa. We only wanted to protect the company, not betray you." But her words rang hollow, her eyes darting toward Daniel in search of support. He glared at me, his jaw twitching, but said nothing, the collapse plain on his face. I rose, gathering the folder and my phone, my heart pounding but my will unshaken. "You thought you could outmaneuver me?" I said, calm and steady. "But I've seen through you, all of you." I paused, locking eyes with each of them. "This fight isn't over." I turned and walked away, leaving behind the thick air of shock. Deborah's sharp gasp, Daniel's muttered curses, and Kenneth's weary sigh lingered in the room. The battle lines had been drawn, and I knew they would regroup. But I was ready. The evidence in my hands was undeniable, my allies prepared, and my determination unshakable. I stepped out into the crisp Omaha night, the city lights reflecting my resolve. This fight would be carried to the very end. The weeks following the confrontation were a whirlwind of reckoning. The upscale restaurant where I had exposed my family's betrayal now felt like a distant memory, but its aftershocks rippled through Omaha. Deborah and Daniel faced immediate consequences. The shareholders of the family company, armed with the evidence I had provided, filed lawsuits against them for attempting to manipulate assets. Legal filings piled up, accusing them of breaching fiduciary duty. The boardroom, once their domain, became a battlefield as investors demanded transparency. Cynthia, my attorney friend, kept me updated, confirming that the cases were moving quickly, with depositions scheduled within days. With the company valued at $10 million, the financial stakes turned the litigation brutal, and the carefully crafted image of Deborah as a shrewd, calculating matriarch began to crack. Gerald, their co-conspirator, suffered a different kind of downfall. His role in orchestrating the transfer of my shares came under scrutiny, and rumors spread throughout Omaha's tight-knit business community. Once a respected face at Chamber of Commerce events, he found himself cast out. Invitations to high-profile galas vanished, and his name became synonymous with deceit. I heard from a former colleague that Gerald's latest project pitch had been flatly rejected, investors citing his tainted reputation. His fall was swift, a stark reminder that betrayal in business carries a steep price in a city like Omaha, where trust is the real currency. Kenneth's response was quieter, but no less telling. 2 weeks after the confrontation, he appeared at my office unannounced, his usual stoic demeanor replaced by unease. "Melissa," he said in a low voice, "I never thought it would go this far. I'm sorry." His eyes stayed fixed on the floor, as if the weight of his complicity was too much to face. But the apology rang hollow, an effort to soothe his conscience rather than repair the damage. I shook my head, my voice cold. "Your apology changes nothing, Kenneth." He left without another word, and I knew forgiveness was not an option, not after years of silent complicity as I was cast aside. His retreat marked the end of any illusion of family loyalty. I chose to cut ties. Within days of the confrontation, I blocked their numbers and emails, severing all contact with Deborah, Daniel, and Kenneth. It wasn't easy, decades of shared memories still clung like ghosts, but it was necessary. I rented a modern apartment in downtown Omaha, its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. The move was symbolic, leaving behind the shadows of the suburbs to step into a future I defined myself. My days filled with fresh energy as I threw myself into work. As a digital marketing specialist, I signed a major new client, a local tech startup eager for my skills. Late nights at my desk building campaigns and analyzing data became a refuge. Each success, another brick in the wall between me and my family's betrayal. Even the city itself seemed to reflect my resolve. Downtown Omaha bustled with a mix of historic brick buildings and sleek modern apartments carrying the spirit of new beginnings. Walking the streets, passing cafes and art galleries, I felt a lightness I hadn't known in years. Cynthia's updates rolled in regularly, Deborah and Daniel scrambling for settlements, legal fees mounting. Shareholder outrage showed no sign of easing, and the press began covering the scandal with headlines like "Family Feud Threatens Legacy Business." I stayed out of the spotlight, letting the fallout play out without my direct hand. My focus was forward on building a life free from their shadow. And yet the wounds they left still lingered. Their betrayal wasn't just in the plot to steal my shares, but in the years of favoritism that paved the way for it. Daniel's entitlement, Deborah's calculated manipulation, Kenneth's passive complicity, they all played their part. But I had risen, and the chaos they now endured was of their own making. The new apartment, the growing career, the reclaimed independence, these were my victories. The fight I had warned them about was far from over. It no longer raged in fiery confrontations, but in each steady, deliberate step I took to secure my future. Sitting in my new apartment overlooking the Missouri River, I reflect on everything. The past 2 months have been a whirlwind of change, slowly settling into a quiet life I've built with my own hands. The view of the water shimmering under the sunset feels like a small reward, a moment of peace after the storm. I lean back on the sofa, a cup of hot chamomile tea in my hand, and think about the lessons I've learned. Independence isn't just about moving out or paying your own bills. It's about trusting your instincts, about standing firm when the world tries to drag you back into its chaos. Since childhood, I had been taught to keep the peace, to smooth over conflicts with a smile. But that only works when everyone plays fair. My family, my parents, and my sister Claire did not. Their betrayal cut deep, not because it was unexpected, but because I had spent so many years convincing myself I could change them. The confrontation 2 months ago was the breaking point. I walked out of that house with nothing but a suitcase and my determination. They thought I would crumble, that I'd crawl back begging, but I didn't. I found this apartment small, but mine, with creaky wooden floors and a view that made every hardship worth it. I started a new job at a local bookstore, surrounded by stories that reminded me of my own strength. Each day, I rebuilt a little more of myself. The biggest lesson: you can't control how others treat you, but you can control how you respond. My parents' manipulation, the years of guilt tripping, the snide remarks, the blatant lies were all just tools to keep me confined. They disguised it as love, as protection, but it was really about control. When I exposed them, they didn't apologize. Instead, they lashed out harder, even threatening lawsuits over family assets they claimed I had stolen. Ridiculous. I hadn't taken a single penny. But those false accusations cost them more than they realized. Friends, neighbors, even distant relatives began to pull away as the truth came out. The reputation they had worked so hard to polish began to crack. Claire was the worst of them all. My sister, the one I once idolized, was the architect of the most vicious betrayals. She twisted stories, distorted my words, and rallied others against me. When I exposed her in the final confrontation, she screamed, calling me ungrateful. But the truth has a way of sticking. People saw through the mask. Her circle of friends shrank, and her perfect image crumbled. I felt no satisfaction, only exhaustion. Revenge doesn't heal, it only leaves a different kind of wound.